Today, I'm joined by my carnivore friend, Robin Shea from Carnivore School of Results. She has a long career history in diet, health, and fitness. She's actually had several cooking shows over the years and even worked with Paula Deen at one point. Join us as we talk about her history and how it ultimately led her and her husband Greg to become carnivores. I'll give you a little spoiler. Greg experienced a health tragedy before going carnivore, and now both he and Robin are healthier than ever. Throughout this interview, Robin provides a lot of great insight about the psychology around diet and healthy living, and at the end, she gives some really fantastic tips about how to get your kids on board too. Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I've experienced radical healing on a carnivore diet. If you're new here, I'm delighted to meet you. And today, I'm also delighted for you to meet Robin. As I mentioned, Robin Shea is my guest today. She and her husband, Greg, are relatively new carnivores, but Robin's history in health, diet, and fitness goes way back. Robin, I understand that over the last couple decades, you've had multiple televised cooking shows, including even working with Paula Deen. So first of all, I'd love to hear how you got into cooking and sort of the health space in the first place.
Oh, I'd love to share it. This is a story I've been telling for a very, very long time. And it's kind of broken into parts. And the first part I called the day dinner diet. Now, this was prior to my fourth son. So I had three boys at home, three under four. And life was busy, busy, busy. And those boys had to be fed. And I remember one night I was at the grocery store. It was raining outside. It was about 8:30 at night. And I'm pushing my cart, and my third son was in a carrier. So he was just a little guy. And then I had the other two. I think Colton was 4 and Mac was 2, something like that. And I have my buggies overflowing, and there's really nothing to make a meal from. It's just, grabbing, trying to satisfy and be what I was supposed to be. And so I go to the checkout, and like I said, it was raining outside, it was cold, and I end up pushing the buggy with my hip out to my car because I had one boy grab a hold of a leg. It was also 8:30 at night, so it was a little dark outside. One boy grabbed a hold of the end of the cart. I had one on a carrier on my arm, and I'm pushing the buggy. And I get to the car, I get the boys in. Of course, I give them a sucker just because I needed a sucker. I mean, it was a tough trip. And got all the groceries in the back of the van. And by the time I sat down at the front seat, I'm in tears. I'm just like, forget it. I can't do this. This is more work than I have in me. And that was the day dinner died. That's when I abandoned all of my nutritional principles. I mean, something in me just snapped. I said, I can't do this. And the nutritional balance of our home really fell on me. Greg had very little interest, and he was a fast food guy, always had been a fast food guy. And so I abandoned everything and flash forward several years, and I'd had Rowdy, and Rowdy was 2. So now I have the 4 under 9. And we had been, ballparks. Our nights were spent at ballparks. Our nights were spent just in the car, passing each other, taking, these kids here and these kids here. And, Rowdy was in tow. No dinner table had been reestablished, because when I said I abandoned it, my dinner table was a place to pay bills and fold laundry. That was it. And one morning, I woke up. My husband and I got in a ridiculously big fight about who knows. Can't even tell you what the argument was about. But when he left the house, I just collapsed, and I was just devastated. Life was just becoming too hard. And I remember in a moment, God just spoke so clearly to me. And he said, reclaim your dinner table. You got this. I will. And he walked me through every step to make that happen. So this animosity and this overwhelm and this inability that I felt to really dominate and claim that part of my family's life melted away. And all I had was patience and time and organization and order. And from that day forward, dinner hour was redefined. My nutritional balance that I'd always been seeking for whatever reason, and I think it's just because that message was so divinely delivered to me, I was empowered to do everything that it needed to do, but empowered from a very positive, loving perspective. So I went to work that day and, made dinner, things turned around in my home. And what I started doing, because my heart had changed in a minute, didn't mean that my workload had changed. I still had 4 little boys. I still had to make dinner happen, but my spirit about it had changed. So I started writing these multi-meal recipes, kind of like bulk cooking, like maybe your grandmother bulk cooked back in the day. So I started writing multi-meal recipes, and it saved my bacon. So whenever I cooked, I never wasted a moment in the kitchen cooking one meal. I was always parlaying those meals, pulling off reserves, and having recipes to do with the leftovers. Well, it was so instrumental in healing my family that I just called a friend actually encouraged me to call the local news station and just say, I do these multi-meal recipes. They're really simple. I know I'm not the only one struggling getting dinner on the table. So if you're ever interested, I'm happy to come on and just demonstrate how I do this. And so I went on in August of 2004, and I'd miss a week until about May 2010. So I became just a featured cook on the local news. I loved it. It kept me honest. It kept me on point. It kept me on track. It was a great part-time gig. And as Rowdy started to get older, I think when Rowdy turned 10, he traveled a lot with my husband because they show horses. So Rowdy and Greg were on the road all the time to different horse events. So PBS had reached out and said, would you like to write a pilot for PBS? So I wrote Southern Fried Fitness, which was basically, I was a fitness person anyway in the gym. And I just thought, okay, that works really well, Southern Fried Fitness. So I went on, I did the pilot. I did several seasons of Southern Fried Fitness. And then they wanted to expand it onto their Create network, which is a bigger PBS platform. But the Southern connotation, they didn't think would sell nationally. So we rebranded it Cooking 80/20 with Robin Shea. So every episode was 2 healthy meals that, not carnivore. I knew nothing about carnivore. This is back in the early, or the 2010s. But it was 2 healthy meals and then 1 indulgent meal. And the philosophy was behind it was just striking balance, because what I had done for the boys was Monday through Friday, mom's way or the highway, period. No arguments. We had a 3-bite rule at the table. And that's what we did. But on the weekends, the kids were empowered and we picked out a treat together. And it was nothing store-bought. It's something that we made in the home. But whatever it was, whatever they wanted to make, we'd make the cakes, we'd make the pies, we'd do the pizza, whatever they wanted to do on the weekend was theirs. So it gave the boys just a good foundation of nourishment versus indulgence. And so those lines weren't really blurred. They knew that's how it was. Well, in 2010, Paula Deen was diagnosed with her diabetes. We share a very similar background. My grandmother was a restaurant owner, both my great-grandmother and my grandmother. And indulgent Southern food is like a religion. I mean, just, cornbread, gravies, all of the sides. I mean, think back to your Thanksgiving plate. It was this much meat and this many sides, right? All of the indulgent sides. So I really felt, because Paula's grandparents also owned a restaurant, kind of a resort type restaurant. And I just felt kind of kindred to her. So I reached out and nothing happened, didn't get in contact with her. At that point in her life, she was very difficult to actually penetrate and get a hold of. And 4 years later, in 2014, her team reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in representing the healthy side of her brand. Now, her public had a very difficult time. They weren't interested in her cleaned up recipes. They wanted her indulgence. So I spent the next several years working within some of her cookbooks, writing or rewriting some of her recipes so that they would fit into a healthier profile. And then we just struck a friendship over the years. I ended up hosting her Evine, some of her online sales. I was the host with her, would go and stay with her in Savannah, and just a very treasured friend to this day. Yeah, so that's, one foot in front of the other, and one door opens another door, and it just kind of parlays, right? I mean, that's just how things happen.
Yeah, what an incredible story. I was going to say exactly what you just said of that is the best example I've ever heard of taking one step at a time, putting one foot in front of the other and not seeing where it's going to lead at all or having a plan at all. And then it just sort of falls into place. That's so, so cool. Sharing that. Now, I'm curious, two things. One, did you become a local celebrity when you were on the news every week for all those years? And two, how did your family respond at the beginning when you went from craziness at mealtime to what mama says is what we're doing?
Well, the local celebrity part is hilarious because that's a t-shirt. I have a really big family. And of course, your family loves to just poke fun. And so my mom had me a shirt made local celebrity because it was just an ongoing joke. I don't know if I was a local celebrity, but I definitely enjoyed it. And as far as the boys went, initially there was a lot of resistance, especially from my husband. My kids are pretty well-raised Southern boys, so I didn't get a lot of sass, but a lot of unhappy faces. And we actually sent my husband an invitation to dinner. And we said, this is where we're going to be every night. We would love to have you join us. Now, one part that I did leave out, my two middles were playing sports at the time, and my oldest was as well. And the day that I was empowered to take my dinner table back, I called both of their coaches. They did not care about sports. They were 3 and 4 years old. They could have cared less. I mean, they wanted to be in the backyard, digging bugs up. They did not care about sports. And I called both of their coaches and I said, yeah, I don't think we're going to move forward this year. And that allowed us this window. Now, I did have to tell my older son, buddy, I got you. He loved it. So I said, you're good. We're going to get you where you need to be. But this part can calm down for another couple years. I don't need to dive in that deep. Once the boys, and I have some examples to show you. Once the boys started identifying what we were doing in our home as this is kind of an identity. We live this way during the week and we live this way on the weekends, and that's how we balance. I noticed a lot of pride. They really were very prideful. I would overhear them talking to their friends. Oh, my mom won't allow me to eat that. Not in a snobby way, just in a identity way. That's not what we do. That's not how we do it. At ballparks, it's often all you see is soft drinks and quick grab stuff. And I would always pack our stuff when we were at the ballpark. So I did notice that they started identifying as 80-20, and that just made me so happy. Just made me so happy because they just took a little bit of pride in it, and I loved that.
That's so sweet. And I am really excited to circle back to that later to find out if that's still kind of a method that you're using as a carnivore, but we'll save that for a little bit. So after all of that change and all those cooking shows and all that, then you wrote a book. Now, I want you to just tell us a little bit about the book, and then we'll circle back to that also a little bit at the end.
Okay, great. Yes, I wrote a book. Now, I call it The Day Dinner Died. That's when I quit. And then I call it Resurrection Day, when I was empowered to take everything back. Okay. So when I crumpled to a little pile on my brick floor in my hall, and my husband walked out of the door, and I had this wonderful download of wisdom and patience and all of this, it was something that I really couldn't put into words. What had happened in my spirit that just changed everything. But I knew it was a systematic something. And it took me until this happened in 2004. It took me until 2014 to start writing the book, because I had to, if I would have tried to explain it to you, it would have sounded like geometry. And it wasn't. It was Ned and the First Reader. It was easy peasy, but I just couldn't articulate it that way. So once I started writing, here's the book, Before the Fork, I just slowed down and took my time. What components were in place? What happened? And the first thing that happened is I was joyful. I was happy. I was patient. I was resilient. I no longer saw obstacles. I saw opportunities around the obstacles. So my focus completely shifted from barriers to paths. And I think that the attitude, the first pillar, because the book is based on pillars, and the first pillars is grounding your change, grounding your lifestyle change in a state of joy, and how you go about tethering to these lifestyle changes in a state of joy. You know, we can change, and sometimes we're forced to change in a state of irritation and aggravation. We are not in control. For instance, Greg, you know, he had something terrible happen, and so his change, he had to change, but it wasn't tethered to joy for the first 18 months. It was tethered to frustration, which made every conscious choice that he had to make to live better and do better a little resent-filled. But when you can shift your thinking, and I walk you through a lot of techniques to help you shift that thinking, and you can tether those decisions to joy, not only does it become an easier journey, but you're actually chemically supporting a lifestyle change from your neurotransmitters and your release of just feel-good hormones, rather than having this change tethered to the cortisol and all the hormones that tend to negate and make change very heavy and toxic. So it's just a complete shift. And then the next one I identified is journaling, because one of the things I did was I was a very effective journaler. And I didn't just journal thoughts and flowery rainbows and kittens. I journaled, what obstacle did you face? Did you have a tool handy? If you did, what was that tool and did it work? If you did not, okay, let's write down 2. So I was a very effective journaler, so that I actually had a manual at the end. And of course, there's something about brain to hand to paper that commits it to a deeper place in your memory. And so I was very, very good about journaling. And also in the journaling, I incorporated a lot of goal setting. And not like running a mile goal setting, but I would identify catalyst goals, which are bright, shiny goals. They're the high school reunions, right? You want to look good for a high school reunion, or you want to lose X number of pounds for a dinner party or something. They burn the brightest, but they burn out the fastest, right? They're not sustainable. So you have your catalyst, and you have other types of goals that are meatier and you can actually build upon. So my journaling kind of goes into that area as well. And next I talk about fitness. You know, that's another pillar in the book, is fitness. And what does your fitness look like? What is your predisposed fitness personality? We all have a fitness personality. I am not a team sport person. Hated it when I was a kid, and I hate it as an adult. And I think it's just part of my, I'm a very kind person, I guess, if that's the right way to consider it, maybe. And if I were to be on a team and I were to let my teammates down, it would devastate me. So if I'm playing solo, if I'm out playing tennis, if I'm running, if I'm doing anything by myself, where it's Robin versus Robin, I'm good to go. But if I let you down as a doubles partner, it just, I don't like that feeling. So knowing what your predisposition to fitness is very important in finding your fitness life. And yours may look nothing like your neighbor's, and that's totally okay. So I created somewhat of a quiz to help you narrow that down so you can find a fitness world that you're going to be happy in, and not one where you go, I gotta go do this. I gotta go do this. Where it shouldn't be like that. It should be an extension of the joyful journey that you're on, and you can find it if you know where to look. So I go into a little bit about fitness. The next thing, the next pillar is your support system. It is so critical that you're surrounded with the right support. And what happens is we often think that we want support from the people that are least equipped to give it. So let's say we want support from the loved ones in our home. My loved ones in my home, my children, my husband, they had zilch. They had nothing to give. They were the obstinate, defiant part of the transformation process. So I had to go outside of them to identify what a support system looks like and what do you need from that support system. There's going to be times in your journey where you're a sponge and all you're doing is absorbing. You have nothing to give. You're just drinking it in, taking in all the information. But in order for an effective support system to work, at some point, you're going to be full. And it's time for you to start pouring out. And then you've completed that support loop. So you take in, you process. And then at some point, it's very important to you to start pouring yourself back out into others so that you can take someone that was where you were 6 months ago and you can lift them up. So support is something that I do touch on and I take very serious. And finally, it's expectations. Setting expectations of what it is that you're wanting to get out of your lifestyle. What is it? What's your end goal? Do you have an appropriate image in your mind that you're aiming toward? Or do you have some cognitive dissonance inside yourself where you have an image of health and fitness, but maybe your sumo type will never achieve that particular shape or size or what have you. So it's understanding that we all come in different shapes and sizes. And this came so apparent to me, and I felt that it was such a critical part to include. I was training my niece in the gym when she was in high school. And she's a little fire plug. She's probably 5 foot if she's any tall. So she's a little bitty thing. And I'm 5'6", almost 5'7". And Paris looked at me one day and she said, Ronnie, I want long arms like yours. And my nieces and nephews call me Ronnie. Well, she's never going to have long arms like mine. She's not built that way. She's got a beautiful little physique. And I had to spend a lot of time with her, showing her images of similar body types that are completely achievable to her. But for her to put me as her idea wasn't fair to her. Mm-hmm. She needed to see something that she could actually attain and feel really, really good about. So I think managing expectations and understanding where you got your ideas of what it's supposed to look like, whether they were right or wrong, sharpening them so that they can actually serve you. And then the second half of the book is just working through really the 4 phases that everyone has to go through in order to commit anything to a true functional practice that you are very well equipped to do and to teach. So it's just the 4 phases, Maslow's principles, just moving through those 4 phases of learning. And so it was, this is my life's work. That book is my life's work. Now, one thing I left off kind of intentionally, there is a nutrition chapter in the book, and it's the 6 pillars, or the 6th pillar. I couldn't commit to nutrition. something just wouldn't allow me to commit to the 80-20 lifestyle, even though I had been living it. I ended up committing the nutrition chapter to just your interpretation as the reader. I gave many, many lifestyle examples, but I could not commit to one. Because at the end of the day, nutrition manipulation works. So if you want to lose weight and you want to do caloric restriction, it works. If you want to do paleo, it works. They all work to some degree if you're textbook following them. So I didn't want to discern between the two. Now, flash forward. Now I completely know why. If I were to go back and write an addendum to the book, it would be the carnivore diet is the diet. There's no more tug of war. There's no more struggle. It's the cleanest, most satisfying, fulfilling, effortless. I mean, so effortless. I've never experienced it on any other eating platform. So I just thought it was kind of ironic that something in me was holding back from committing to one nutrition plan. But now I would be in 100%.
Wow, that is so interesting. I mean, I love about the book that it isn't tied to one particular diet, because the psychology of it can apply to anything, frankly, even things besides a diet. So interesting to think back, things might have changed if you wrote it now, but interesting how you went down this path. And yeah. I love the subtitle, if you could share that.
Getting your mind right to succeed on any diet.
Even in the title, you didn't commit. I love it.
I just couldn't. I don't know why. And I have so much respect. I still have followers from the 80-20 lifestyle that almost feel as if I'm betraying them. And I get that. And if they come to a health crossroad in their life, as my husband and I did, they may have to take their 80-20 to a different level. And carnivore may find a little glimmer and poke itself in, and that may, fill them up. But if they're happy and content on 80-20, if their blood work is representative of someone that it's working for, I'm all about it. Do you? That is fantastic. Greg and I just had to elevate. We had to elevate. We didn't have a choice.
Same. I mean, I've shared a lot, the health struggles that I had before. And so if people feel good eating plants, eating whatever, go for it. I'm so supportive. If someone wants to be vegan and they're feeling their very best and they're very healthy, then I think that's fantastic. But for me, it was the carnivore diet for sure. And so I'm certainly not judging anyone, but that's what I'm sharing just based on my own experience. And it sounds like you're there too. So we're gonna transition and start talking about the carnivore diet next. 2 years ago, something tragic happened to your husband, Greg. Tell us about that.
Well, we were down in Tybee Island. All of my children, my grandchildren, daughter-in-laws, we were all down there just having a little family celebration. And we had gone to eat at one of Paula's restaurants, and Paula and Michael joined us, and we were just really enjoying each other. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous May 1st is when it happened, 2 years ago, May 1st. And we went back to the house on Tybee Island, and my daughter-in-laws and I were playing with the babies in the front yard. The boys are on the back patio having drinks and smoking cigars and playing cards. I mean, they were just having a big time. And Greg doesn't drink very much at all. And he had a margarita at Paula's restaurant, and he went to tell one of my son's buddies something, and he couldn't speak. His voice just didn't come out. And he was like, that's weird. And he didn't want to embarrass the boys. He was thinking, maybe it was a strong margarita. So he put himself to bed. He just kind of, disappeared, went and put himself to bed. I didn't think anything of it. I really didn't. Greg is not a night owl, so I didn't think a lot of it. And I went to bed later, and we woke up the next day, and we had a photographer coming to the house. So I'd gotten up, gotten dressed. Greg doesn't take very long to get dressed, so I just let him sleep. Well, I came in to get him up. When he got out of bed, I immediately noticed the drooping in his face, the weakness in his arm. He was in denial. When I was asking, I'm like, are you okay? And he told me that he had lost his speech the night before. And I truly thought that he had a TIA, just a TIA. And I thought, okay, I'm going to give him just a little bit of time to pull out of this. The photographer was on her way. So, he took a shower. He wasn't disoriented though. So he had his wits about him, but it was still, maybe it was even still happening. I don't know. But 5-10 minutes into the pictures, I looked at one of my sons and I told him, the one that actually lives in Savannah, I said, you go get your Jeep. We got to go. We got to get him to the hospital. Something's going on. And we ended up going to the hospital, and he had actually had a massive stroke. So, it was something that we actually should have anticipated, because I knew from the time he was 35 years old that his blood work reflected dangers for a cardiac event or a stroke event. It was evident in his blood work, but I could never get him to take that serious. Well, at 58 years old, my husband suffered a major stroke.
Oh my goodness. So I knew that your husband had had a stroke and that was a big part of your story, but I must take a moment to use this as a teaching tool for people watching. A couple of things that I recognize as a physical therapist in a trauma hospital who works with stroke patients all the time. There are 3 big things in that story that can help somebody. So I want to just spend a moment talking about that. Number 1 is, if you are experiencing any symptoms like that your body's not working correctly, you feel weird, your vision's off, your speech is off, and it's not happened to you before, don't poo-poo that away. Oh, it's from the margarita. No, that is very serious. You need treatment immediately. So absolutely, the worst thing you can do is go to bed. Don't do that, because that means at least probably 8 hours are going to go by before you get treated. And then number 2, if you're recognizing symptoms in a loved one, don't minimize those. Even if it seems like they're getting better, or even if you think, well, we just need to do this thing real quick, no, immediate treatment is necessary. I mean, that could have turned into a complete emergency. And then number 3, rather than driving to the hospital yourself, if you can call an ambulance, you're going to be so much better off, because they can start treatment right away in the ambulance. And the whole checking in process at the hospital is completely expedited when you go by ambulance. They have a room ready to go. They have a CT scan set up ready. They have all the drugs ready in case they're needed, versus if you go in your own vehicle through the emergency department, you have to check in, they have to do the whole triage. It takes forever. And the most important thing with treating a stroke, or even if it's just a mini stroke, a TIA, the most important thing is time. So do not delay. Use Robin's story as motivation to not repeat some of those things. We learn from others' mistakes. We learn from our own mistakes. And so I hope that this will help somebody.
Yes.
So thank you for letting me share that.
Oh, no, I'm so glad that you did. In retrospect, it's easy to pick apart what you did wrong. I hope I never need that information, but I have it. It's like a club you don't want to be part of, but once you're part of it, to know the right things to do is critical. So we definitely made some mistakes, but we got back to Bowling Green after 4 days in the hospital down in Savannah. And I was a super obnoxious helicopter wife. I mean, I had very, very little faith that Greg was going to change his diet or his lifestyle. Greg is a super high octane person. He pushes against expectations. So I really didn't have a lot of confidence that he was going to actually change his lifestyle. So I leaned into the medications as much as he did. Now, we went into this with high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And when I say high cholesterol, I mean, that's probably the wrong phrase now that I have so much more education in that area of my life. His triglycerides were over 450. His HDL was as low as 19 at one point. So he had nothing working for him. His triglycerides were also elevated. It was just a mess. So I do all of the medication research, the Vasipa, all of the medications. I think at one time he was on 6 different medications. But I was driving him crazy. I was just micromanaging because we'd known this since he was 35. He's 58. He never consistently took his medicine. Blood pressure was always elevated. So I was terrified that, it could happen again in a minute. Well, finally, this was probably about a year ago. I just threw my hands up and I said, you know what, God, I'm just going to love him while he's here, because I'm making the time that we are together miserable, being terrified and micromanaging his every move. So I just said, I'm just going to love him. I'm going to turn his healthcare over to him. And I'm just going to love him while I have him, whatever that looks like. And I told him, I said, I can't make your appointments anymore. No, it's not healthy for us, for me to take the pressure off of you so much to care for yourself. If that makes any sense. I was doing all the worrying and all the caring for him. He didn't have to do any of it. And it wasn't good for us. So that was about a year ago right now. And I was able to walk away with a lot of peace and just love him. Well, in August of this past year, August 2022, he had some routine blood work the beginning of August, had it read August 9th. And he brought it home to me and handed it to me. Now, he had been self-caring. I hadn't been babysitting him. He had been doing a very good job, taking all of the medications, doing everything that he was supposed to do. And he hands me this lipid profile with 403 triglycerides, 70 LDL, 20 HDL. They didn't even run an A1C. So I just looked at that, knowing that he was doing everything they had prescribed. Now, he was eating whatever the hell he wanted to eat. He figured if I can take the medication, I can still go through the fast food line, right? Because he didn't get that at home. And I just looked at him and I said, this is a dead man walking. That's what I'm looking at. And I'm terrified. Now, I had been researching carnivore since the day of his stroke and really digging deep into the science and but like I said, he's so resistant to change. There was no window to let that message in, no window. And I knew enough about behavioral science not to push into him with yet another thing he has to do. So on that day, on August 9th, I knew Greg needed a messenger that he could relate to, not me. It was someone else. And who was that messenger going to be? That was the important question. Who was going to penetrate him? Exactly, because he was open. This scared him too. And that messenger was Dr. Berry, and who lives just not very far from us. We're in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and he's just down in Nashville. So we're not very far at all. So Dr. Berry also knew whatever I sent Greg had to be short and sweet, to the point. So Dr. Berry had a 9-minute video on lowering your triglycerides. And I sent it to Greg. I texted it over to him and I said, digest this. Just please listen to it. That's all I ask. Listen to it and then let me know what you think. And I left it right there. And Dr. Berry just speaks a man's language. He's very much a man's man, which my husband is. And my husband texted me back. He said, let's do it. I'm ready. Let's do it. And that was August 9th. And we have not gone off since. And I don't even know what today is. 14th, 12th, something like that of April. And he has been 100% committed, as well as I have. I went on it to support him. But both of us have gotten back so much more than we could have dreamed of.
Wow, what an incredible story. And I definitely want to hear the benefits that you've both had. But first, I'm curious what made you start thinking about the carnivore diet the day of his stroke? Because typically, people that are not educated about this diet think that it's going to cause a stroke, not recover from a stroke. So, how did you end up on that path?
Well, I had enough nutritional knowledge um, to know that Greg has had gastro problems our entire marriage. I mean, from our first date, we go back and make jokes about it. So uncomfortable. And I knew, okay, we've got to strip it down. And I just had enough wherewithal and enough savvy about me. And I'm also a self-educator. I absolutely love it. I'm a sponge for knowledge. And I always go into situations looking to learn, not looking to disprove. So I'm open to so much. Rather than coming in like this, I come in like this. I'll be the filter. Let me decide. And so I can digest a tremendous amount of information and pick the parts out that are working for me. And it's just, I guess I don't want to say wherewithal, but it really was, I was very, very open. And I knew that Greg's diet put him in distress all the time. So we had to do something radical. I had already been low carb for years. I had been low carb. He wasn't. I had been low carb, keto, whatever. So it fit the bill. And then the science made sense. The actual science made so much sense to me, so much more than the nonsensical science over here. So it was a very, very good fit, very good fit. And the timing, it was the perfect storm for us to do it.
Wow, I'm so glad for what's going to turn into a happy ending to what could have been just terrible for your husband's health and for your marriage. So thank you so much for sharing all of that. Let's back up just for a moment to back when Greg was still recovering from his stroke immediately after it happened. Do you remember what kind of recommendations the doctors had for him as far as medications, or if there was some other treatment besides medications? And also, this is near and dear to my heart, what they were feeding him in the hospital?
What were they feeding him in the hospital? I actually think my son brought him in food, and it was whatever he wanted. This was I'm not sure what they call the hospitals where they're stroke equipped, like other stroke victims would be brought to this hospital. So it was so we were very fortunate for that. I don't remember it. It was nothing substantial or nothing, monumental. I know my son Mac brought him several meals in. And at this point, I'm not monitoring his food. I'm just, looking at him and wondering where we're going to go from here. And as far as recommendations, in Savannah, because we were out of town, they didn't have a lot of recommendations there. They wrote up a lot of reports, sent it back to our doctor here in Bowling Green. And when we got here, outside of the medication, I hate to say it, I love my doctor. He's a great, great man. But the emphasis was on the medication. There was zero emphasis on the lifestyle, on the food choices, on the things that are within your control that can actually make a difference. Everything was external. Everything was take this, take this, take this. Yeah, heartbreaking now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's really a struggle for me, knowing what I know, to work in a hospital, because I see what these people are eating in the hospital and what we're basically recommending. And their breakfast will be like pancakes, orange juice, oatmeal, and maybe they can sneak in a little bit of bacon, but like careful with the bacon because
right.
it'll cause a stroke.
It's dangerous.
Absolutely crazy. And then I don't believe that doctors are out to get anybody or that they're just money hungry. People believe that. I don't. I work with them. I know them. But I think that's how they're trained, to prescribe these pills. And there's just so little talk about anything lifestyle. If there is any talk about that, it's like you should get some exercise and clean up your diet, but there's no specifics. And if there are specifics with the diet, it's wrong in my opinion. It's low saturated fat and lots of basically carbs, like from fruits and vegetables and stuff. And I just feel like we're doing a disservice to all these people, but I know I'm preaching to the choir with you.
Well, you are. I mean, I completely get it, but I think, like I've heard Dr. Berry say so many times, and I have to kind of maybe take an oppositional point to this statement that he makes often, and it's that people want the tools. Well, I don't know that they do. I really don't know that they do. Greg had the tools. He didn't want the tools. The pills were easier for him because he got to still go through the fast food line. So behavioral change, lifestyle change, transformational change often comes at a very big price. Your condition, you were so relieved and grateful to find something that gave you relief. And, just from your autoimmune disease. And Greg is finally so grateful that he is on a lifestyle that gave him his life back. He's on no medications. I didn't know it, but he stopped the medications the day we started Carnivore. Stopped them. So all of his blood work from the time we started has been clean with no assistance. It's clean blood work. And another thing that as somebody that tries to help people grasp transformational change, prevention is not glamorous. Triage is glamorous. You go in and you save somebody at the 11th hour, you're the hero. It's a story, but that person chooses bacon over oatmeal. There's no story there. So it's very unglamorous. It's like buckling up and celebrating every time you get to your destination that you didn't get in a wreck, rather than there's a fender bender and everybody stops for 25 minutes to look at the fender bender. There's no glory in prevention. So it's a very unglamorous thing to sell, So anyway, that's just kind of my observation from working with people. I don't know that a lot of people really do want the tools. But we can't do it all. So I don't know.
That's a very good point. And I think we're doing what we can, sharing the story, and kind of like what you said with Greg, you took a step back and you planted some seeds here and there, but it had to be his decision. And it sounds like that's paid in dividends. So what advice would you give somebody who wants to help their loved one, who wants them to make a lifestyle change, and what's best, but they're very resistant?
I think it's very important to know where they are medically and to know where you are medically, because I think society is still very body shape oriented, looking at a body and thinking healthy, unhealthy, healthy, unhealthy. That is not an indicator. The body is, extra weight, sure. We all know that can lead somewhere. My husband was 195 pounds, 6'1". He was not overweight. So I think it's important, rather than, pouncing on someone that you love and assuming they need help. If they share their blood work with you and you have the wherewithal and you have the knowledge to look at that blood work and say, you have a 6.8 A1C, your fasting insulin is here, and you can help interpret that, and you can help them see the pattern, that's when you become really helpful. And then finding the right messenger. You may not be the right messenger, just like the support system. It's not always where you think it's going to be. So sometimes having someone else penetrate them from a different direction is much more effective than you trying to cram a message down their throat. And I also think going on the journey with them. It's not going to hurt you to go carnivore. As a matter of fact, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I only did it to support him. That's the only reason I did it. My numbers look great. They've looked great for a long time. I didn't have to do this. I wanted to do it to support him. And now I am so grateful that I did.
So you've touched a little bit on the improvements that Greg's had, but do you mind giving some details about how his labs look, how his health is now compared to shortly after the stroke when he was still on the medications? And then I'd love to hear what benefits you've had.
Okay, great. So when we got the blood panel back, August 9th, I told you 403, triglycerides, LDL, it was all over the place. And when, look at it right here, when I got his blood work back, it was just fantastic. Okay, here it is. His total cholesterol was 183. His triglycerides were 93 from 403. In 4 months, they dropped to 93. His HDL went from 20 to 38. His LDL went from 80 to 128. But the super cool thing is his triglyceride HDL ratio was 18.2 before the stroke. That the last really horrible blood reading, 18.2. I mean, that is awful. And his ratio now is 2.2. So 2.2 is optimal. It's optimal. I mean, it's just like, are you kidding me? This is a picture of what carnivore can do to someone with toxic inflammation, just reacting to their food world, and it's affecting everything. And I mean, that right there is a picture of a healthy man.
That is so incredible. He's a healthy man now, and he truly was like one step out of the grave, even still after his stroke, on statins and everything. So incredible.
Yeah. Some things that happened to Greg, I'll just touch on those real quick. Immediately, his digestive issues gone. I mean, that was the first thing that he noticed. No gas. And I have 4 sons and a husband. Gas is something that has been really pronounced in my house for many, many, many years. Completely gone. He couldn't believe it. We would plan trips around where the bathrooms were. If he was in a situation where he didn't have access to a bathroom, I would see him start sweating just out of nervousness because he couldn't trust his stomach. And all of that completely gone. He lost 30 pounds in the first 4 months. Now he's leveled off. His body is not losing any weight anymore. He's completely leveled off. He's always had, he was a baseball player, so he's always had just arthritis and achy hands, achy elbow, achy shoulders. Arthritis completely gone. Now, the thing that didn't bounce back is his energy, but a lot of that is post-stroke. So he had to rebuild both his brain and his body, and so I just kind of give his lack of energy a pass. It's starting to come back now, but the first 6 months on carnivore, where you think you're going to get this burst of energy, I got it, but it still didn't translate over to him yet. He still had a lot of internal healing to do. So I think he's finally crossing over the other side there. So all good with him.
So Greg has had miraculous results, which is so awesome and honestly quite typical after someone starts a carnivore diet when they have horrible lab values. But what benefits have you noticed, Robin?
Well, in 2017, I had a grandson. And in 2017, I also started entering into menopause. So I have this beautiful grandbaby. I've got my work over here that I'm doing. And I start playing with menopause, the little perimenopausal thing. Anyway, by the time Greg has his stroke, I'm up almost 20 pounds and I'm through menopause. And I've done everything that I can personally do. And I have taught this since 2004. Nothing changed in my life. My diet was the same. My workouts were the same. This was hormonal shifted weight redistribution. I couldn't budget. So I had really withdrawn a lot from my work. I almost felt like a fraud. For the first time in my life, I could not do what I was trying to teach others to do. So I just kind of withdrew from my work, and it was okay because I had the grandbabies. By 2019, I had two. So they filled me with so much joy that I was happy to kind of shift my focus, and I just kind of put that part of my life to bed and just kind of abandoned it, really left my social media, and was really trying to make peace with this new postmenopausal Robin body that I didn't really know very well. I thought that weight was here to stay. So when I got on Carnivore with Greg, within the first 4 months, that 20 pounds literally melted away. It was gone, but not gone in the sense, sometimes when you're young, you can lose weight. And if you lose weight in an unhealthy way, maybe your face looks really gaunt and drawn. You just don't lose it proportionately. You lose it in a very scattered way. I lost weight in areas that I have never lost weight before in my life. I have nice, big, powerful thighs. Greg and I joke about it all the time. And I mean, my thighs, my pants are swimming on my thighs, which I've never had. So my body released weight in areas that I completely did not expect. And I am back to my pre-menopausal, but even before that, I'm back to the weight that I was, in my 30s. So that was unexpected and fantastic. My energy, of course, skyrocketed. Feel great. I probably average 6 hours a night sleep, and it's not because I'm depriving myself of sleep. It's because at 5 o'clock in the morning, I can literally feel the dawn effect. I can feel my body starting to just say, okay, let's get you going. And I wake up and Greg will say, stay in bed a little while. Let's sit here and talk. I'm like, I got to go. I've got stuff to do. My body's telling me I got to move. So energy is off the hook. Okay. I am not an athlete. Let's just put that out there. I am not an athlete, but I'm a lifter. I love to lift. I've lifted for years. Well, my performance in the gym has never been what it is now. I run faster for longer distances. I lift heavier. That was something I didn't expect. I just did not expect that. And finally, my sleep. Those 5 hours that I do get a night, I'm on another planet. It is the deepest, most restorative sleep I've ever experienced. So yeah, I'm all good. I mean, it gave me things that I didn't even know I needed, but now I would just never want to live without them.
Yeah, this diet has a way of doing that. Like maybe you started for one thing, and in your case, the one thing was to support Greg, but then you get all these incredible benefits you had no idea you were missing out on. So way to go. Let's circle back just a moment to some of the work you did previously before you were carnivore. I know that your sort of mantra was doing 80-20. So 80% healthy, 20% indulgence. And you had a quote that I loved about eating food to nourish your body, but indulge your spirit. So I'm curious now, on a carnivore diet, what exactly do you guys eat? And are you still incorporating 80-20? Like, are you 80% carnivore, 20% other things? And then lastly, do you find that this way of eating is nourishing your body and indulging your spirit?
I love all of this. And I still love the whole concept of 80-20, but I have to be so superficial here and just really tell you how I feel. 80-20 was still a struggle. There was still a struggle wrapped up in that division. Even though the nourishing and the indulgence completely makes mental sense. You have to nourish your body, but you always have room for indulgence. But it was still a push-pull. because with that door open to that 20%, it's always gnawing a little at you. And so it was something that you had to stay constantly on your toes about. And I did a good job of that. I was on my toes about it. And I am very rigid in my my parameters. So I could make it work. But it wasn't until I experienced carnivore and I felt what you feel when you are truly nourished, that this 20% started identifying differently. The 20% was the first bite of the ribeye and the fat and the butter. That is as delicious to me as anything that could have been on that 20% before. So it just kind of redefined itself. And no, we don't 80-20 our carnivore. And that's for a couple of reasons. The main reason being addiction is often something that isn't talked about in the carnivore journey. And so I will hear other coaches talking about gradually stepping your toe into the carnivore lifestyle. And me being a behavioral person, I'm like, that's like telling an alcoholic to have a light beer on the weekends. It's just not. And when you go into it, you don't identify, is this an addiction or not? So you're not making that differentiation. You don't really know, am I truly addicted, or do I just have poor eating choices? I don't know. So I'm more an all in. Let's get this figured out. Let's dive in head first. It's going to be much more uncomfortable for some than it is for others because of behavioral components, addictive components, but also because of molecular damage. So everyone's going to respond, but you're not going to know unless you go. And then once you go, you can start, through your journaling, you can start finding your own paths. I don't know if I just went off on a tangent or if I actually answered your question, but my spirit is nourished through my ribeyes there. It really is. There's nothing better to me than a delicious fatty ribeye.
I completely relate to that. I've shared before that my indulgence in the past when I was a binge eater was a hot fudge sundae. I mean, I would feel so good when I was eating it. I'd be so excited to eat it. And then, of course, you eat it and you feel terrible. And then you start the cycle of binging. But now I have the exact same experience, the anticipation and the enjoyment with a ribeye. And I feel great after. So, I mean, it's once your mind frame changes and you really get rid of all the carbs, all the sugar, all the seed oils in your diet and your body, I mean, your body wants those nourishing foods. So everything nourishes your body and indulges your spirit. It's incredible.
No, I mean, that is absolutely it. It does both. There's no reason to have a division anymore because it provides both. It is so nourishing and yet so incredibly indulgent that it really, really is the best.
If you had known about this diet when your kids were little and you started doing all the sort of meal changes that you made, would you have made your family a family of carnivores?
Well, there's two caveats to that. If Greg were on board with me and let's say we had little children now, 100%. I mean, I would rock it. We would rock it together. Having a partner that is supportive of your lifestyle is so incredibly important. The first 33 years, I didn't have that. So I kind of rolled that boulder up a hill by myself. And, Greg's probably sorry on some level for that. Maybe not. I don't know. But now that he is on board, when we do things together, you're unstoppable as parents when you have the same mindset. And then when your children see that and see how empowered you are as the parent, it's like telling your child, you don't have to buckle up if you don't want to. Well, that's never optional. Well, the nutrition should equally be as unoptionable. If that's a word.
We're gonna make
should
it
not
work.
have options there either. Yet we often let the kids drive their nutrition role, but man, if two parents can be on the same team and raise children in this nutritional climate like that, I can't imagine. If only, if only.
Definitely better late than never, but I hear you. It'd be nice to have known about this so long ago. But now all your kids are out of the house now, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So when you do get together as a family, what does that look like now?
Well, fortunately, my boys, a lot of their nutrition they grew up with is a carryover. So I'm not saying they don't indulge, they do indulge, but no one is a high carb fast food kid. No one. And so when they come here and Greg and I provide what we provide for them, they always know they're going to have ample amounts of meat. And we do really good as a family. We do really, really well. They still have very fast-paced lives. One of my sons is married to a nutritionist, so they have, a wonderful, well-balanced. They're not carnivore, but they are low carb, and they just. I'm really proud of the boys. Even my 22-year-old Rowdy is very conscientious of what he eats and his physical activity. All of them. So yeah, really, really proud of that.
That's great. So I'd love to hear an idea of what a day looks like for you and Greg. What are you eating exactly?
Okay, so for me, I am a faster, and I have fasted for a very long time, and I operate really well off of fasting. So I am either a 2MAD or an OMAD, and I usually like to start my eating window at about 3 to 7. So I usually have about a 4-hour eating window. And I operate really good on that. I know not a lot of folks, will fast with carnivore, but I personally enjoy it. Now, Greg, on the other hand, he's still a feeding machine. So we will start with some breakfast ribeyes in the morning for him, or bacon, pork belly, eggs. And then he can pretty much wait until the evening and have a ribeye with me, or have, an elk steak or some egg pudding. I love egg pudding. It's one of my very favorites. He's a big hunter. All my boys are hunters. They harvested a beautiful elk this year, so I have a freezer full of elk. So we'll make an elk steak. Now we have to butter that up a little bit because they're a little leaner than our beef. Big fan of pork belly. Love my ribeyes. I love to go. We have a little grocer here, a little meat market here, that they'll blend up my 80/20 ground beef. And so it's really loose. It's not like a tight packed meat. It's really loose. And those hamburger patties are the best. So I can do those all day long. What brisket? We're from Texas originally, so we grew up on just good brisket. So brisket is always on the menu. So that about covers it. I do some roasts. Just stew down a roast, and Greg loves that. So, nobody's worse for the wear. Nobody's complaining. We'll have pork rind nachos. Those are always good. So
that's a very good indulgence. And so anyone who's listening to this that thinks the carnivore diet is restrictive, oh my gosh, my mouth is watering. It's the least restrictive diet. And I think for the way that you're describing Greg as kind of a man's man, I feel like someone like that probably would tend more toward a diet like this. That's so very decadent with the meats and, the flavors in that way, versus like becoming a vegan. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems to me like probably a better fit.
Well, none of Greg's hunting buddies are vegans, so that's not a big part of our world. Not a part of our world. But yeah, all my boys are big meat eaters. They're very comfortable with the language. This isn't a foreign concept to them. And I love it. My husband will message me, my sons will message me, and send me their friends' numbers. This guy wants to know more about carnivore. This person wants to know more about, and so I'm messaging their friends back. When my boys were in high school, their friends would if they went out to dinner, would take a picture of their plate and send me a picture of their plate. If they were proud of what they were eating, they would send me a picture, like, look what I'm doing. So I just love it. I love being a cheerleader for these young men trying to navigate their way.
That's awesome. Now I have to know, what do Greg's doctors think now that they've seen his labs improve so much? Do they know exactly what he's doing? Do they know he stopped his meds? Kind of, where are they?
Honestly, I do our labs independent, and I have really, really studied a lot of Dr. Silas's work. And we actually have our first appointment with him in June, which I'm so excited about. So although we do sit with Greg, with the hormone doctor that draws the blood work, and we'll go over it with him, I'm not terribly interested in what he's saying. I know what I'm looking for. And I know that because I've done thousands of hours of research on blood markers and what it needs to look like in relationship to, to other things. But I also know that I'm not the all-knowing. So all of that will be sent to Dr. Silas. And then he'll do a final blood work in June. Not a final, but he'll do his blood profiles in June. And then we'll have 4 blood profiles since starting Carnivore for comparison and just kind of trajectory. Where's it going? How do we both look? Is it moving in the right direction? But I feel incredibly confident that it is.
Yeah, way to be your own advocate. And honestly, I mean, you've been such a great advocate for your husband too. He's lucky to have you. If somebody is considering the carnivore diet and they're on the fence, what advice do you have for them? And especially if they have a family, if they have a potentially resistant spouse or children of any age, what advice could you provide?
You mean if they actually lived my life in 2004? All right. So for a family, for a young family, you're a mom, you're a dad, and you've got some littles, the first thing I would say is be empowered. Okay. So you go into this as the authority. Do enough research that you can answer their questions, but empower yourself with some knowledge. And then you really need to invite the kids to the party, meaning that you can't render them without a voice. So I'll give you a little example. When the boys were little and I reclaimed our family's dinner table, we made these placemats. And this was our promise to each other during our dinner hour, that we would share and we would do this kind of thing. And I had all the boys sign it. And then here they wrote, we had family rules, at dinner table rules. So one of their rules, collectively, the boys threw in a rule, was no zucchini or squash is ever to be served. They hated it. And so I never served zucchini or squash at their table. We really honored those rules. The next thing is, like, each family member had their own placemat. So they had a place at the table. That was their special place. And they also helped me make the menu. And especially going carnivore, you as the parent, write out ideas for them, meal ideas for them, and let them plug 1 or 2 days in a week. Let each child pick a day that they're choosing the meal. That will empower them with choice, and they'll feel part of the process. Show a lot of grace, have a lot of mercy, and always have a backup. So for instance, when the boys would completely poo-poo something that I had made, they always had a peanut butter sandwich backup. So I know that's not going to be our option here, but you can think of another very simple, easy backup if they're just really don't like what's being served. So that would be my my advice to families. Now, individuals, if you can get a partner, try to get a partner, because it's just like an accountability partner in the gym. I may let myself down, but I would never be a no-show for my partner. So if you can go into carnivore and you can find someone to just kind of ride along with you, that accountability partner can really mean the difference between success and failure for you. Get active in group. learn as much as you can learn about the carnivore lifestyle. As I mentioned earlier, do the journaling, keep it simple, keep it so simple. I mean, ABC meals. I see a lot of carnivores, and I appreciate this as someone that did a lot of cooking for a career for many, many years. I appreciate the creative recipes and the making the pizza crust out of chicken, and I appreciate all of that. At this stage in my life, you know what that sounds like to me? A lot of flipping work. It just sounds like a lot of work to me. Where you give me my ribeye, I don't want anything else. And that's as simple as it gets. So if you're a cook and you want to go into those areas of complicated, carnivore recipes, more power to you, knock it out of the park, you'll do great. But if you can keep it simple, the first 30, 60, 90, 120 days, so you're not overcomplicating things in your mind, that will really, really look to serve you. But my main tip is have a marker. Have a marker. It doesn't matter what the marker is. You could have current blood work. You could have body composition tracking sheets. You could have weight tracking sheets. You could have blood pressure tracking sheets. You could have ketone glucose tracking sheets. You could have all of them and use them all together. But when you launch into this, have a marker that you can gauge, because if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. And it's very difficult to see improvement, especially over a 30-day period of time. That's just really not enough time to see marked improvement. But if you track, and I provide all of those sheets, that's just one of the gifts that I give out. So I don't think it's active right now, but I can make it active where you can download those sheets from me for free and track. But tracking is so, so critical. And the scale is just one tracker. And it's probably not the best tracker because it gives you lots of highs and lots of lows and lots of highs and lots of lows. So using a combination of tracking sheets is really, really helpful to make sure you're headed in the right direction.
That is excellent advice. Thank you so much for that. And just for spending your day with me and with my viewers, this has been really incredible. So thank you very much.
Oh, no, it's been my pleasure. And before we wrap up, I do want to mention that Greg and I do offer a course, and it's called Carnivore Basics, the first 30 days. We walk you through just the basic elements of carnivore, the advantages, the expectations, everything that you would need to know to have confidence in moving into that lifestyle. But I also do a lot of focus on the behavioral aspects. And because eating is one thing, but breaking that behavioral monster that just takes us over sometimes is something else. So we do a lot of behavioral work in the course as well. And it starts the first of each month. So it's just a month-long course, 30-day course. Pretty enjoyable. Greg is pretty funny. I'm pretty not funny, but he's pretty funny. So he makes it fun. But for anyone that is interested in the course, it is active signups right now. And through this program, any of your viewers, if they use the code delighted to meet you, they'll receive 15% off of the course. And It's just carnivoreschoolofresults.com. And that's what it is on Instagram. My YouTube is Robin Shea TV. Facebook is Robin Shea official page. And yeah, I mean, you can find us just Carnivore School of Results. We'll be there.
Now, to clarify, the code delighted to meet you, is it MEAT or MEET?
MEAT.
Perfect. Awesome. So people know exactly where to find you and how they can work with you. Now, if they're interested in your book, is that available?
Yes, the book, Before the Fork, Getting Your Mind Right to Succeed on Any Diet, can be purchased directly from Amazon. We do have PDF downloads. If you're interested in the course, then you can purchase a PDF download, but you can actually get the hard book on Amazon. Just type in the title, it'll pop up.
Thanks again, Robin. This has been incredible. If you guys have found this helpful or insightful in any way, please like and share and subscribe. And you can also find me on Instagram. Delighted to meet you, and we can chat every day.